In the early 1980s, federal agents realized that some of the most ordinary-looking pizzerias in small American towns, places selling slices for $1 in strip malls across the Midwest,
Thank you so
were
much.
secretly serving as the retail distribution points for one of the largest heroin trafficking operations in American history. This is the story of the Pizza Connection, the case that proved a slice of pizza could be the perfect cover for moving hundreds of millions of dollars in narcotics.
Our agreement
The
is
scheme's
finalized.
brilliance lay in its simplicity. Sicilian Mafia figures, working in coordination with elements of the American Mafia, particularly the Bonanno crime family, recognized that small, family-run pizzerias offered something genuinely useful to a large-scale drug trafficking operation. They were cash businesses, they attracted little scrutiny, they explained large volumes of unexplained income, and pizzeria ownership provided a legitimate reason for otherwise unremarkable Sicilian immigrants to be present across dozens of small towns throughout the American Midwest and Northeast without raising suspicion. The network structure worked roughly like this. Heroin was refined in clandestine laboratories in Sicily, itself supplied by raw opium originating largely from the Golden Crescent region of Southwest Asia, then smuggled into the United States through various international routes. Once in the country, the heroin needed to be distributed and, critically, the resulting cash needed to be laundered back into a form that would not attract regulatory or law enforcement attention. Pizzerias, it turned out, were an almost perfect solution. A small-town pizza restaurant generating unusually high cash receipts did not typically draw the same scrutiny a bank deposit of equivalent size would. Investigators later documented that some of the pizzerias involved in the network were reporting revenue figures that, when compared to their actual size, seating capacity, and location, made essentially no economic sense unless a very different kind of business was actually happening behind the counter. The investigation that eventually unraveled this network became one of the most significant joint operations in the history of American law enforcement, involving the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and Italian law enforcement authorities working in coordination across two countries, an unusually collaborative international effort for its time. The case drew its name directly from the pizzerias at the center of the distribution network, and it took years of patient investigative work, including extensive wiretaps, financial forensic analysis, and undercover surveillance, to fully map out the scope of the operation. When the case finally went to trial in New York starting in 1985, it became, at the time, one of the longest and most complex criminal trials in American federal court history, running for roughly a year and a half and involving more than 20 defendants. Prosecutors presented evidence detailing a trafficking operation that investigators estimated had moved well over $1 billion in heroin proceeds through the network over the course of its operation, a genuinely staggering figure for a scheme built on the humble foundation of small-town pizza shops. The trial's complexity was significant even by the standards of major organized crime prosecutions, requiring prosecutors to trace international financial transactions, translate extensive wiretapped conversations conducted partly in Sicilian dialect, and establish clear organizational links between defendants who, on the surface, appeared to be nothing more than restaurant owners and employees running unremarkable small businesses across several states. By the time the trial concluded in 1987, the overwhelming majority of defendants had been convicted, and the case delivered a serious blow to the specific transatlantic trafficking network it had targeted, demonstrating that Sicilian and American organized crime networks could successfully coordinate large-scale narcotics operations across international borders, using ordinary small businesses as effective cover. The case also became a significant example, studied afterward by law enforcement and legal scholars, of how sophisticated financial investigation techniques, particularly the tracing of cash flows through legitimate-seeming businesses, could be used to dismantle organized crime networks that had otherwise proven difficult to penetrate through traditional investigative methods alone. The Pizza Connection case is worth understanding within a broader context, because it was not simply an isolated criminal curiosity.
Welcome to Maria's, where every pizza tells a story. It fit into a pattern that has appeared repeatedly throughout the history of organized crime and money laundering. Criminal organizations gravitating toward cash-intensive, low-scrutiny small businesses, specifically because those businesses provide a natural, plausible explanation for large and difficult-to-trace cash flows. Restaurants and pizzerias specifically have appeared in numerous other organized crime investigations over the decades for exactly this reason.
precisely because a pizza restaurant's core economics, primarily cash transactions, relatively low fixed costs, and revenue that can be difficult for outside observers to verify against actual customer volume, make it a genuinely useful vehicle for exactly this kind of financial concealment, independent of any actual mob involvement in the broader pizza industry as a whole. It is worth being clear about what the Pizza Connection case does and does not demonstrate. It does not mean that organized crime infiltration was, or is, a widespread or defining characteristic of the pizza industry generally, which today is an enormous, overwhelmingly legitimate global business built by millions of independent restaurant owners and major corporate chains with no connection whatsoever to organized crime. What the case does demonstrate is something more specific and, in its own way, more interesting. That the ordinary, unglamorous economics of a specific type of small business, one built on cash, immigrant labor networks, and difficult-to-verify revenue, made it an unusually effective and largely overlooked tool for one of the largest drug trafficking and money laundering operations federal investigators had encountered up to that point. The Pizza Connection case remains a genuinely striking historical footnote precisely because of that contrast. The gap between the almost aggressively mundane image of a small-town pizza shop
Thank you very
and
much.
the genuinely enormous, internationally
Bye-bye.
coordinated criminal enterprise that was, for years, quietly operating behind a significant number of storefronts that looked to any ordinary customer walking in for a slice, exactly like any other pizzeria in America. If this story surprised you, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Drop a comment and tell us what other true crime story hidden behind an everyday business you want us to investigate next.